Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing podcast with NikoTheLegend, also known as Nicholas Sorokin. And the time is 9:07 p.m., November 11th, 16th. I'm already new at this. We'll just keep going. All right, so I got the date wrong, guys, but that's okay. So we're here to continue our podcast Aftermath for Final Fantasy, because this month we're just going to talk all about Final Fantasy and why it's so great. And I decided to have our very first special guest on here. His name is Zero Score, and he is a awesome YouTuber. I'm going to promote you a little bit here, Zero Score. He does awesome. Well, he's doing his first story play, correct, for Final Fantasy VIII. That's the first one he's done. Okay, so yeah, he's doing that right now. He's on Pt.2. It's great. He gets all these YouTubers together to record voice lines for these characters, and Zero plays the main character, Squall. He's always sounds enthused when he's doing the voice lines, but it's great. It's a lot of fun to watch that, and I myself have done a few voice lines for these Joe Schmo guards, which I love doing. It doesn't matter. So another thing, he does reviews for games and also Let's Plays, top 5, top 10. Whatever the guy desires to do, right? That's how it goes.
Pretty much, yeah. Dabbled in everything.
Okay, awesome. So, a little quick recap in Aftermath Part 1 for the Final Fantasy podcast I did. Basically, I talked about why I liked Final Fantasy so much and what drew me very close to, what it's all about and why I fell in love with it, and talked about the top 9 video I just released of it and stuff, and what the psychology was behind it and this and that. So we have Zero Score on here to help us. We're just gonna talk Final Fantasy. That's all we're doing. We're gonna get to the fun parts, the bad parts, and all the sad moments of Final Fantasy. And I'd love to hear his opinions and everything. So because he's the guru, right? You're a guru, I would assume.
I've been known to dabble over the years in guruism.
Awesome. Okay, so let's just start it off with Final Fantasy 15. Okay, so I just released a podcast yesterday talking about preparation for that game, and I had all my opinions about it, and the good and the bad. So we'll get to that once I get a little bit of a second voice on it. So what I think about it so far, Zero Score, is that it's definitely it's gonna be an interesting experience to play that game, because I feel that it's like completely, in a sense, it still has Final Fantasy aspects to it, correct? Like chocobos, leveling up, and all that jazz, but it's like completely different this time around. Like open world and stuff, and riding around in a car with your homeboys and all that, and getting flat tires and dealing with you're the prince of the freaking land and stuff. And I just watched like Kingsglaive like a couple nights ago, which I thought was pretty good. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
Okay. It's a kind of a lengthy movie. It's about 2 hours long of beautiful CGI, and Sony's really great at making those freaking FMVs for their games and stuff, and it's definitely a good prequel to, or whatever, leading up to the main game, because it definitely feels like it leaves off into the Final Fantasy 15 game. I mean, and it's got a ton of really cool actors in it. Like you got Sean Bean, the
guy who dies in everything. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy. That's true. I don't know. Did he die in National Treasure?
He was in National Treasure?
Yeah, he was the villain.
Probably, then, if he's the villain.
So yeah, this, that exactly what Zero just said. He dies in everything. But, he's one of the famous actors in there. Then you got Lena Headey, which is from Game of Thrones.
Lena Headey,
okay. Is that how you say her last name?
Yeah. There's no S in the name, so it's definitely not what you said.
Wow, looks like I didn't even watch the movie at all. I was too distracted by Sean Bean's death. Anyway, so yeah, it's a great movie. You guys should check it out. Zero, you should definitely check it out. Are you going to purchase Final Fantasy 15?
Funny story about that. I've been following the development of Final Fantasy 15 for literally years.
Yeah.
Back when it was still, Final Fantasy Versus 13 or whatever that was. And that first demo came out that was bundled with Final Fantasy Type O. And I bought Type O to play the demo. Like, I tried Type O, it was okay, but I basically got it to play the demo. And that was actually the first thing I did on my channel. Like, I launched the channel with, like, covering that demo, because I was like, not everyone has this. It'll be a great way to get popular. What people do.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually really enjoyed that demo. It was a very, like, unfinished form of the game, but it was fun. It got me excited. Wasn't perfect, but, it was cool. Then that other demo came out that, like, pretty much everyone could get.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually liked that one even more, because it was just Noctis.
Yeah.
By himself, like, kind of in a more, story-focused thing. It felt more epic, that kind of thing. Then I started seeing, like, early moments of the actual game, and it kind of made me less excited. Like, you see the whole party, like, your 4 burly, leather-clad heroes.
Yeah, boy band.
Like, yeah. Like, swarming these little rats and, like, cactuses and stuff, and just, like, you don't even see what's happening, because you have very little control over the combat. And it's just, like, this flash of leather, and then they move on to the next enemy. And it's done. Like, you won.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really funny. I think it was yesterday I watched the Clueless Gamer thing that Conan does on Final Fantasy 15 that he did with Elijah Wood. It's really funny. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But he's playing through those early moments too, and he's kind of saying the same things. Like what is happening here? Like, what is this boy band doing? Running around. Like, I have no idea what's going on in this game. It makes no sense. And then, like, later on, you see some other things, and there's, like, apparently an Adamantoise, like the big, armored turtle thing.
Yeah.
And the one guy says, like it's just a very small, like, initial fight, and then it's over. And then he's like, oh yeah, when you actually fight that thing, it takes 72 real hours to beat it. And he goes, how is this a game? Like, who would play this? And I'm like, I understand where he's coming from. Like, I've been so excited for this game, but I really do understand where he's coming from. Because it feels like so much of it is like, you don't really play it. You you run around, you push a car. Like, it's very pretty, but it's that idea that Final Fantasy, like, well, Square has been doing lately of, like, not really letting you play the game that you purchased.
Yeah.
And I got World of Final Fantasy, which is amazing, by the way. And it really kind of reminded me of, like, the classic games, the kind of thing you don't see anymore, like turn-based, very stat-heavy, spending half your time in menus, upgrading your characters and stuff. Like, that kind of very, like, foreign RPG that they just don't bring over here anymore. And I love every minute of it.
Well, you didn't say it, but I looked at a review of it on IGN, and they were saying that in World of Final Fantasy that there's, like, this, like, type of Pokemon aspect to it where you, like, collect monsters and stuff, which I thought was, like, really cool because I don't know if have you ever played Dragon Quest VIII at all?
No, I actually haven't. I've played, like, one Dragon Quest game. I couldn't get into it.
Okay, well, those games had, like, a type of, like, monster capture element to it, and then you would pit up against other people's monsters and, like, this tournament mini game that they had. So I like that in an aspect of a game because it's like, well, I've never seen this in Final Fantasy before. So when I saw that, I thought that was really cool because, like, it gives you, you're not just fighting to level up. Like, maybe you're fighting to capture monsters and then put them on your team. Like, that's how it usually goes, right? It's like,
and you can get a very diverse team, and, like, they get different abilities that can help you out through puzzles and get extra treasure and stuff like that. Like, there really is a good element, like, how you form your party of these monsters, and they're all, like, classic Final Fantasy monsters, like cutesy versions of them too. So you get, like, an adorable little Moogle, or, like, a baby Chocobo that can, like, kind of, they don't call it evolve, but it's essentially evolve into, like, a normal sized Chocobo.
Yeah.
And, like, they've kind of built up this lore because, like, even the summons, like, what used to be, like, classic Final Fantasy summons are now monsters that you capture that are cool. Large or extra large monsters. But you also, like, you can find their baby forms. Yeah. So, like, picture a little baby, like Ifrit. And, like, building that up to turn it into Ifrit. Like, that's super cool.
Yeah, when I was seeing that when it was like first announced, I thought it was really cool. But I had to get used to the whole like, oh, it's very cutesy. It's a cutesy type game because I'm following the Square Enix page on Facebook or whatever, and I saw an advertisement for it, and I was like, holy shit, this sounds really cool because it's called World of Final Fantasy, so that already caught my attention. Then when I saw it, I was like, okay, this is interesting. It's got turn-based, and it's got all these cool heroes in it from all the games, and it's cutesy. And that's the one thing that I was like, okay. It's like, should I be interested in this? But from gathering your thoughts on it, it sounds like it's a notable entry in the franchise.
Yeah, and it's fun. Like the entire development of Final Fantasy 15, they've made the characters seem like they have a good time together and stuff like that. But the whole story, for one, seems like nonsense. Mm-hmm. Like apparently, I've heard it ties into Final Fantasy 12 a little bit, and I found the story of that game super boring. Like all the politics and stuff involved in it. Like I just don't care about that side of things. Like I get it, they have princesses and kings and war, but what happened to Final Fantasy being fun? Like, kind of going back to your video on, like, why Final Fantasy, 9 is better than 7. Mm-hmm. Like, 9 is one of the most fun, like, funny entries in the entire series.
Yeah.
And it's one of the only ones that's like that, really. Mm-hmm. Like, some of the others have their moments, but, like, they get so bogged down in their own, like, dark, deep story that they forget to have fun. Yeah. And, like, so Final Fantasy, like, World of Final Fantasy, I turn it on, and it's just, like, it's adorable, but it also looks good, and, like, the dialogue is really clever and funny. Yeah, it's super cheesy, but I love it. Like, the jokes are terrible in a great way and all this. Like, it's just you have a good time playing it. And that's something I haven't been able to say about Final Fantasy in a while.
Well, I just... Like, the great thing, like you were saying about 9 is, it's a funny entry. And, everybody... It's not like the game is, like, intentional on... it's like, all right, we're going to make this a really funny Final Fantasy game. Like, no, it's just the characters are who they are. Like, you got Zidane, who's a thief, who acts like a thief, like, perfectly. And you got Steiner, who's like this, I got to protect the princess. But he's also kind of goofy and kind of got, like, a stick up his ass at the same time. But he's cool and funny, in his own way. And then you got Vivi, who's, ignorance is bliss, basically. Trying to find himself, but at the same time, he is kind of, he's like this cute looking little black mage with like a droopy hat and stuff, but at the same time, everything has its connection on making it a great game. And like other games, you were saying that, they're kind of funny, but they're not solely like completely funny. Like Final Fantasy VI's comic relief is probably Locke, I'm assuming, right? Because
for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, and then 5, you have there's like this old
the old man.
Yeah, the old man is funny. He's the comic relief, but that's just the great things about those games. It's like you were able to easily connect with a lot of these characters, and I'm sure they weren't all great in the beginning because like Final Fantasy 1 on the first Nintendo. I mean, you can only expect so much from an 8-bit game,
right?
But then when you get to like further entries like 12, what is it? Not 14. It's an MMO, but 12,
13.
13. Oh God,
the 13 saga.
Yeah, 13, 15, and I mean I really like 12, but I completely understand on the whole politics thing, because when I first played that game, I had no idea what the fuck was going on, because it was like 10 years ago, and I was like in high school, and I was learning literally about politics at the time in school. So it was a fairly new concept to me, and I didn't... All Final Fantasy 12 reminded me of that it was like Star Wars. You had the Empire, and then you had the Rebellion, and then, the whole land gets taken over, blah, 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 and then you're Vaughn, who's, to me, like a Luke Skywalker and stuff, just... This is some like ordinary life and destiny and all this, but some of those characters I really liked in there, because they were all interesting in their own way. But when you get to like games like 13, I just didn't like anybody in that game. They just weren't. I don't know. Maybe it was just executed poorly. I mean, the whole game was, if you remember the JonTron video, Final Hallway, it's basically what it was like, and
And that's what I'm kind of worried about with 15. Like, I'm sure it'll be a perfectly good game, but, like, a lot of my excitement is kind of tempered the more I see of it, because it's just, like... For one, I don't really like the games where you start out with your whole party. Because I feel like there's not a lot of time to develop them individually. They only have an identity from each other. And it seems like this entire party of people is, like, they're best friends, and so, literally, like, you don't care about any of them individually.
Yeah.
Maybe Noctis, because I feel like the story kind of is built around him with, like, the whole royal family and stuff like that. But the only character I really, like, enjoyed, at least from the demos, was Cindy. And that's just because, like, she was kind of funny. And, like, I feel like, you know, has some depth with, like, like, being Sid's daughter and, like, never feeling like she's good enough, that kind of thing. Like, there's some elements there that you can relate to. The others are just, like, spoiled brats that complain because they have to ride a chocobo instead of their car. Which, riding a chocobo sounds way more awesome. So...
Yeah. And there's a lot of issues I had with the game too, because I was just like you. I was like, oh, versus 13, when, you know, it was supposed to be like what was the title of Final Fantasy versus 13 was supposed to be like, what, taking in the same world as 13, or you said 12, right?
Well, when it was versus 13, it was supposed to be this whole shared universe. It was like the like Crystallis. I don't remember what it was. It was a dumb, like, way too long title. But I've heard that, like, the politics of 15 tie into the politics of 12, like, in a totally different era. Like, probably Evil Ice is, like, you know, destroyed from war, but, like, it's still out there. And, like, 15 is taking place in that same universe. Because I guess they reference some of the same places that they reference in 12.
Yeah.
But they never actually make direct reference to 12. I mean... Again, no one's, like, played it all the way through to know that, but...
Yeah, and, like, when I first saw 15, I was like, okay, this main character looks pretty cool, because I thought Noctis looked pretty cool as a main character.
Yeah.
I thought Lightning was a cool looking character, but I thought Noctis just looked way cooler. Because when it comes to Final Fantasy, I'm, like, such a sucker when it comes to that. Like, the main character has to... Like, Cloud looks really freaking cool. I think Squall looks really cool. Tidus was an exception because I had to get used to, you know...
I think you mean Titus.
Titus, yeah. There goes the debate.
There's no debate.
You know, I know.
Titus,
shot
GIF,
first, right?
meme. We're done.
It's just like the whole Han Solo and Greedo, you know, who shot first, but, you know, Han's shot first. And then you get to Vaughn, you know, Final Fantasy 12, who, like, I had to get used to his voice because it kind of reminded me of Titus.
Thank you.
And they looked kind of similar in a way, you know.
Yeah.
Both blonde hair, had a shirt with no shirt underneath, and kind of were like, well, I felt like Titus was kind of like, he had his head in the clouds a lot, but Vaughn just felt, you know, just
the wandering soul.
A wandering soul, didn't know, you know, needed something to help guide him to his destiny. And then you get to, you know, going back to 15 or whatever, it's like versus 13. Okay, so I'm going to pay attention to this. And then you hear about Type 0, because Type 0 was like the same thing, right? Same universe or shared universe.
I didn't play enough of it to figure that out, but I think it was.
Because, yeah. And, you know, I have Type 0 on Xbox One and stuff, and I was playing it for a bit, you know. I got sidetracked by other games, no doubt. I bought it because it was like $15, and I was like, I wanted to test it out.
I just didn't like it.
Yeah. It was interesting in its concept, you know. It was, you know, despite the graphics, because it's like, you know, kind of like a port, just an HD version of the PS Vita version of it. And the whole, like, there's so many characters in it, and it kind of is really hard to pay attention to those characters, because I don't like, when it comes to characters, I shouldn't have to read their, like, descriptions on their character profile in the game, you know, to find out who they are. Like, the game should just be, like, naturally flowing with that. And that's a game just like 15 that just starts you off with all those characters. So there's no build up, there's no, like, hey, how do we get here, how did we meet, what, you know, point A to point B. And 15, like you said, it's like a boy band in a car all complaining about stupid stuff. Like, it just makes it seem like all the characters are dumb in their own way. Like, they're all their heads are in the clouds. And there's like one character in the group that's just like this really burly macho man, and I just can't stand his voice because you hear it in Kingsglaive for about 2 seconds, and I already didn't like it. But
yeah, he's like the proper British one, isn't he?
He's I think there's a guy with glasses that has kind of like a frohawk or something like that. I can't remember.
There's a squirrely one. I remember him.
Yeah, there's a squirrely one, and then burly man, and then Noctis, and then the prominent male guy.
See, that's the point. Like, these 4 characters that we've all seen in like multiple trailers, demos, everything. Can anyone name anyone other than Noctis? I know Ignis, but I don't know which one he is.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's like they're like budget Ninja Turtles, except they all look the same. They don't have colors to distinguish them.
Yeah. They don't have a color palette at all.
Right.
They just have different hair colors, barely, because 2 of them are blonde and 2 of them are black hair. Mm-hmm. And that was my biggest issue leading up to Final Fantasy 15, because it was called Versus 13 for a long time, until it's like, oh, here's a gameplay trailer of 15, and then let's have where Versus 13 molds into 15. It was just like their clever way of doing it. I'm just like, oh, okay. Let's just slap Final Fantasy 15 on there. And that was like one of the first like gameplay trailers they showed. Like, I just remember Noctis like in town. I think he was fighting one of those big like giant guys with like the big Buster Blade looking swords with like a one eye or something. I can't remember what they were called.
Oh yeah, the Iron Giant, Vin Diesel.
Yeah. And that he was just like flipping everywhere and stuff. First he was on a building, and then all of a sudden he's like over water, and then he comes back to the battle. And I was just like, okay, this is kind of cool, because like the combat is so like everywhere. But like you said, where's the like control to where I can just sit down, press a button, and then I hit him? It's like, no, I have to do like Matrix moves here and there. But
well, it's either button mashing or sweet Matrix moves. There's no in between. Yeah. Like, the way they set out the combat is you have essentially I think it's the directional pad. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Goes between your 4 different attacks, which can either be combinations of weapons and magic or different kinds of weapons. So you push that direction, and it toggles like kind of mid combo, which is a decent like action RPG style, because it mixes up your attacks and stuff. But you have essentially 4 different attacks you can use. That's it.
Yeah.
And like, this isn't Kingdom Hearts, and even that has more depth to it, really, because like the directionals just kind of go to the different command. It's not all you have. Like, if you select the magic command, it gives you all your magic. This, like, you select a magic spell, and that's the only one you have in that spot.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Because that was one of the things I had a gripe with, because after seeing the game, after it was announced for it was Final Fantasy 15. Then it announced that Duskai demo, is that what it's called?
Yeah, episode Duskai.
And that's the demo you were talking about, I'm assuming, for Type O.
Mm-hmm.
And I never got a chance to play because I didn't have Type O yet, but it looked pretty interesting. It was like you were like in the wilderness and stuff, then you go in a cave, and then
you fight a behemoth and you get Ramu, and you kind of see how the summon system works, which was awesome back then. But now it's just ooh, pretty, you do nothing.
Yeah, and eventually they're like, oh, the platinum demo, the demo that everyone played. And I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, like, I did not like that demo at all. Let me explain why. Okay, so there were I think as a whole, I thought it was cool. Like, you go in this dream world, and you're little baby Noctis at first, little toddler Noctis. And you have this little summon, what was his name? Carnbuckle?
Yeah, Carnbuckle.
And, he's communicating with you. But I just didn't understand why it had to communicate through a cell phone, because it's a fucking summon. But at the same,
And it's not like it's even any kind of, like, electrical or, like, thunder type summon. It friggin' casts Reflect. Yeah, that's what Carbuckle does.
Yeah, it's nothing really too special. But, it looked really cool. Like, Carbuckle looked really awesome, like, graphically and stuff.
Yeah, it was adorable.
But like I'm sensing like there was a cell phone involved because maybe Noctis, is a dream. He's an adult now who's dreaming of himself as a kid, and he uses his phone in real life all the freaking time. So it's just one of those things that's just carried over to the dream world. But it was annoying nonetheless because every time you moved, it was like Navi, or Faye from Skyward Sword, and we all know how awful that was.
Almost as awful as your pronunciation of literally everything.
What is it, Fi?
Yeah. I always said Fee, but apparently it's supposed to be like Wi-Fi. Like, that's the idea. So it's Fi. And also Navi. Or, wait, I think you said Navi. I don't remember.
Navi. I guess because I always called her Navy as a kid growing up, but, details, sir, details. So yeah, playing through the demo, the environment looked really cool. I love environments like that. It starts you off in kind of like a foresty area, and then it leads on to a lake area, and you see this giant summon of Leviathan, which was insane because I've never seen Leviathan that big in a Final Fantasy game before. And, the frame rate wasn't doing too bad. I understand it's a demo, so it's not going to be amazing. And then all of a sudden you go into this like play area, right? And then you start doing the fighting. And I was just, the fighting, like you said, it reminded me of Kingdom Hearts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Kingdom Hearts
Same engine, by the way.
Yes. Oh, are you freaking serious?
They're using
right
the Kingdom Hearts 3 engine to make this game. That's why it feels so similar. I'm not kidding.
Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
10 years in development, folks.
Okay. So now... Oh, man. All right, so I need to process that. So, okay, now it definitely... now I know why that IGM is just like, hey, this feels like Kingdom Hearts. And I don't know if they were... I can't remember if they were complaining about it or they liked it. But when you were playing Kingdom Hearts, as Sora, Keyblade, when you hit the enemies, you felt a pretty good, like, impact of you're doing, like, actual damage,
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like the enemies are taking a beating. Granted, some enemies in Kingdom Hearts, like bosses... don't really get knocked back because they're bosses, and the only time they get knocked back is when you hit them enough. But other enemies felt like you were doing something to them. But in this demo, maybe it was just bad sound programming, but like when you hit them, it just didn't sound like you were really doing anything. And like, I can't remember, did you have like a toy sword or something?
Yeah,
or...
there's like a few different weapons you could get, but it was like a little toy sword, toy hammer.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, something like that. But it was showing off how the weapon and like magic mechanic works, because you could slot different things into your 4 spots.
Mm-hmm. And eventually you get out of the play area because it was like, it's just a clever way of introducing combat, baby steps. And then you get outside into the city and stuff, and then you're actually fighting enemies. But I just didn't feel like there was anything to the combat. Like you said, button mashing. Like, maybe it'll be like Kingdom Hearts, to where you level up and you unlock certain skills or AP points, and you plug them into attacks that you can learn that help you finalize your combos and stuff. Like that's because that was cool about Kingdom Hearts. It's like, I can do a slide attack, or I could roll. Those skill slots basically. And I wonder if it's like that for Final Fantasy 15, to where you add to your combos and stuff, to help your guy become more badass. Do you know if it's like that at all?
I don't, but even if it is, that's still not acceptable. Like, I've been waiting about 7 to 10 years for Kingdom Hearts 3 also. That doesn't mean I want 2 of them.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, I have a feeling that Kingdom Hearts 3, man, people were waiting a long time for that game. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad it's finally coming out.
And it looks great, too.
Yeah, it does look fantastic. And, like, it still looks like it has a lot of the stuff from the first 2 that made it so great. But then it has added stuff like, the summons and stuff. Like, you riding around an Olympian cart and all that, fighting a Titan or something. I thought that was really cool. And just, the combat looks similar, which is fine. Why fix something that's not broken? Just, if you want to add stuff to it, that's cool. But just don't change, like, the core aspect to it. Mm-hmm. But 15, it's just very dry. It's a very dry experience, and I'm just pressing the same button over and over. I'm not doing any different combos, and maybe I was just a noob at the demo, but I don't know who can be a noob at a demo. And I just had a friend over, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, this isn't fun to me right now. And then you fight the Iron Giant. You fight Vin Diesel at the end, and you learn how to use spells and stuff, which the spells look really cool in the game. Like, I remember you were able to use like a blizzard spell, or is it fire? I can't remember. Fire. And then you take it out, and then the demo ends or something. But throughout that whole process of playing that demo, it was, more ruined with the constant annoying summon by Carbuncle just texting you and stuff. It's like, oh god.
Hey, Bay, you up?
Yeah, I just like, why? Why did it's a demo? Why did you have to introduce that annoying mechanic? So I'm hoping it's not like a thing that happens throughout your like the full game experience. When you're playing single player and all that.
Yeah. I don't feel like Final Fantasy is like a series that needed to be open world. Like, every series now seems to want it to go open world. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like, Breath of the Wild, I think, is going to be a really good Zelda game. Because it's basically taking... Zelda technically was already open world with the first one. Like, the first ever Zelda game was like, you had very little instruction, you wandered the world map trying to figure out where to go next. That's an open world game. There's side quests, all that stuff. So Breath of the Wild is basically taking that same idea and applying it to a bigger, like, 3D, modern game. Final Fantasy kind of was like that with the first Final Fantasy game, you could argue, but this doesn't feel like that. It's not like they're taking the already existing foundation and doing something new with it. They're just throwing that out the window and being like, hey, do you remember how bland and like empty the last Metal Gear Solid game was? Well, here's a Final Fantasy version of that.
Yeah. And that was... You were talking about, games are starting to go open world because that's the next big thing to do with, these titles coming out with these new game engines, like, whoa, we can do so much. But you kind of get lost in, like, you see the prize there and you just want to grab it and then use the expense that you have, just do something new, create something with it, but at the same time, you're kind of like leaving your old beliefs behind and what made your old games originally good. So, Breath of the Wild looks fantastic. I think it's freaking awesome looking. Like, I'm one of the few people, or not one of the few, but some people don't like it because it's like, oh, it reminds me of Skyrim or something, like blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, whatever. And just going what you were saying, because I read, it's supposed to be like the first Zelda. You just start, and then you just go. You just go wherever the hell you want, climb anywhere, whatever. Link's just got such great stamina, endurance. That's great because it's a video game. It doesn't have to be so realistic. I mean, Zelda, so that's great that it's still keeping its Zelda core to it, to where it's like, this is Link. This guy's there's several Links, but Link mainly can take so much shit, do all these crazy things and stuff, and we don't know how he just does it. He's just some elf that lives in the woods usually. But getting to 15, it's open world. It's like you said, it's less, it's like it's in a modern world. I can feel like I can relate to it, right? And then it has some fantasy elements in it. It's like, oh, it has summons in it, oh, it has magic, or oh, there's a chocobo. But if you took that out, the world, it just wouldn't be Final Fantasy. It just, I don't know, it just wouldn't to me, because if you did it to like Final Fantasy 9, if you took like the monsters out of the main characters, you could easily tell that it's a fantasy world, like it doesn't belong. We can't really relate to it because it's like, it's called Final Fantasy for a fucking reason. So when I see 15, I don't think it's anything like that. And like you said, open world, it's like, okay, that's an interesting way to go now. This is, like I said before, a new thing they're doing. But then the developers even said that you start out the game, obviously, in the beginning, it's the least, most, whatever, correct grammar you want to use, the least fantasy in the beginning of the game. And then eventually it turns into more and more fantasy as you progress. And they even said it's the most open world in like the first half of the game, and then eventually becomes more linear near that last half or something like that. So it's kind of an interesting thing they're doing, but they even said that this is a new thing they're doing with Final Fantasy now, and just the car thing. Like, oh yeah. God, I just can't. I just can't.
And maybe my problem is that I feel like I'm glad they did it, but I feel like they shot themselves in the foot by releasing World of Final Fantasy so close to 15, because that game satisfied me. Like, I don't feel like I need 15 because I've got my classic Final Fantasy fix there. Like, between playing through Final Fantasy 8 still and like picking up World of Final Fantasy, it's got all the depth and like actual control of combat. Like, some of those battles are really hard, and you have to think about your strategy and stuff. You have to do that to an extent in Final Fantasy 15, but it's mostly like running around, finding the opportune time to shoot in and do a cool move, and then like dodge, parry, run away again. Like, that's most of the combat. And I like more about like the strategy of picking your attacks, like using elements cleverly, like that kind of thing. And I feel like you don't get that. Even summons, I don't know if you knew this, but summons are activated basically by one of your party members dying. So, like, they die, and then it prompts you to... Prompto, that's another one of their names, Prompto. It prompts you to, like, use their death to, like, summon a monster. It's really weird.
That is weird. Oh my... Okay.
Unless they changed it since the episode Duske demo, but I don't think they did.
Okay, that's news to me. Well, like you said, like turn-based stuff for Final Fantasy is what defined that game, and how it's executed. I mean, there were plenty of games back in the day to where are turn-based, like those old dungeon crawling games like D&D on PC or whatever, or I can't remember what other games, but there were games like that, right? So when you're playing Final Fantasy 1, I mean, you just start off right away in the overworld or whatever you want to call it, and then you're already fighting, and you're like, oh shit, what's going on? And you have that control. Like, you can be patient if you want, take your time, figure out the game and stuff. And what's great about besides Final Fantasy 1, but Final Fantasy games that they were starting to do, like 9 has it, is that you can either have active, to where the enemies don't wait for your turn, they attack whenever it's their turn, and then if you're too slow, then they get a free hit, and then there's wait, where it's strictly I go, you go, I go, you go. And that was cool because you get to strategize. It's like it's like you're on a chessboard or something, you get to move your pieces. Except in Final Fantasy, you don't really move your pieces, at least in the classic ones when you're fighting. So that's what made it great. Like, you felt like every battle was so memorable because it goes like crazy transition goes into it, and it's like it looks like you're on a stage and you're performing and stuff. And the graphics get better, like in 7 when you start fighting monsters, which was silly, but it's whatever. And you felt like you accomplished something. But when it gets to a point where it's like 15, where it's like, oh, it's free, real time, you see the monsters there, and you don't have to wait your turn. You just like, all right, I got my trigger finger ready to press the X button to repeatedly mash it. And then, I don't know.
It makes battle feel tedious, which is ironic when you think about like how often the random encounters are in old Final Fantasy games. Like saying that now it seems more tedious than that. But it's like, before it felt like an event. Like you move on, you hit a battle, dun, dun, dun. Like the music sets in, like it's a thing, like it gets you pumped up. And these newer games, it's like, oh, there's an enemy over there. I'm going to go this other way. Like, it's just not worth your time. Yeah,
and what was great about the old ones, if you didn't want to face them, you had a choice to run away. But guess what? You could die if you try running away because there's a success rate for it. It could take multiple turns to run away. You can lose money. Enemies can kill your party members, and it's like it penalizes whatever you want to say it, for being a coward.
Yeah.
That's how the game sees, or you don't want to fight because you're in a dungeon. You want to leave it after beating the boss, because Final Fantasy is so classic. You fight a boss and it doesn't let you escape the dungeon. You're like, oh, all right, guys, let's go. Let's skip ahead about 20 minutes and we're in the inn now. No, you beat the boss. You have to run your ass all the way back, and you get into more fights, and it frustrates the hell out of you. But the reward, guess what? You level up. You get money, you get items, you get experience and stuff. So it's kind of a love. You could say it's a love-hate relationship with the random battle encounters.
You could say the adventure is its own reward.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a game. It's a series that for so long tested your patience and how much you're willing to go to. Grind and get into these encounters and become the best basically at it. And in 15, like you said, you're just like, you know what? I see that Vin Diesel over there. You know what? No. Nah.
He looks hard. I'm not going to bother. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, I'm gonna fight him, and then all of a sudden it's just like button mashing. I'm playing Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the arcade, which was fantastic, arcade game, no doubt.
Yeah.
But
I mean, 3's better because it does 0, but that's beside the point.
Yeah. Yes, that's why I bought that game a long time ago, because 0 is amazing. But see, that's what made 12 so great. I really love the combat in 12.
What combat in 12?
Well,
you mean the combat you set up in advance?
Well, I liked it how it was kind of like a hybrid in a sense. So, right, you see the enemies, right? You don't necessarily go up to them and get the trigger finger ready, because it still had turn-based aspects to it, even though they were there. Which that's why I liked the combat so much in it, because it was like, okay, so this is kind of leaning towards real-time combat, but still has some of like the old school elements to it. It still had turn-based, so it's like a hybrid. Is that how you saw it?
No. I basically saw it as an auto-play strategy game. Because like the game itself was fine. I enjoyed the idea they did with it. I would have preferred it had a battle system more like 9 or something. But like the game worked, I guess. But I basically saw that you do all of your battle planning before you start the battle, like setting up your systems, whatever those things are called. And then you just engage in combat and then watch and hope that you put up a good system. And I don't like that. Like, I like to play my battles. That's the point of the game. It's like, sure, you can button mash. Like in World of Final Fantasy, half the time I hit attack until they're dead, because they're not that strong. Mm-hmm. But like if you get into a boss battle and stuff like that, like you're gonna want to use some different tactics. And I sucked at 12 because I'd get into a battle and then like basically have to learn how they work, die, spawn back, and then like change up my tactics and go back into the battle, watch that play out, die, go, Like, you never really feel like you have any control in the battle itself.
Mm-hmm. And, that was the first Final Fantasy game to have, I think they were called, Gambits?
That's it, yeah, Gambits.
Gambits, and that was kind of like a fairly new concept in games, kind of around that time, because 12 came out like a decade ago or 8 years ago?
Something like that.
Remember. And there was a game that was like that. It was Dragon Age Origins. Have you ever played that game? Well, it had that too, like a gambit system. It's like, oh, my health gets below 30%. Teammate's gonna heal me and stuff. Not to get off track, but I didn't really like the combat in Origins because it's just kind of slow and kind of I don't know. It's kind of hard to coordinate in that game, but that was just me. But 12, like I kind of forgot until you mentioned it about the gambit system, and I'm trying to remember like I remember the game system. I just don't remember it being like played throughout the whole time, because I know for a fact that you just hit attack in 12 and then he'll just keep attacking. You don't even have to press it anymore. That's what you're talking about, right? It's just kind of like on autopilot.
Yeah, you set up what they do before the battle starts, and then when you go into battle, they just do those things. I think you have a little bit of limited control over Vaughn, but that's about it.
Mm-hmm. So, but see, that's there was like I said, I enjoyed it. Like I said, I can understand where you're coming from on it, because it's like they like Square Enix, Squaresoft, they always experiment each Final Fantasy game. They always try something unique or different,
which I do appreciate.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I understand with 15, they're not afraid to take risks. I mean, they spent a buttload of time
and money
on this game, and money. Yeah, definitely, just hiring voice actors alone, and it's like it's going to be an interesting experience, no doubt. And I definitely, when I first saw, like I said, like the gameplay trailers and stuff, and then more of the game, and I was contemplating if I wanted it. Like definitely in the beginning of this year, I definitely didn't want the game, because I was seeing things that I didn't like, and I was like, this doesn't look anything Final Fantasy related. It just looks like Final Modern instead of Fantasy, Final Reality or something, like something that's just like, this just doesn't seem like, this world doesn't seem very magical at all, I don't know. And one thing that I didn't understand why they did this was, I'm sure you saw it, but it was a gameplay trailer, and it was literally like a Metal Gear Solid trailer, or gameplay trailer. It was Noctis and his group of friends sneaking around inside of this base, and they were going around breaking necks, or backstabbing them, whatever their assassination moves are. And then all of a sudden, it just turns into an action flick. He's on a gun turret mowing down enemies, and it was just like, what am I watching here? Like, how is this? What is fantasy about this? I'm freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger on a gun turret, stabbing people in the back, in Commando or something, grenade launchering people. It's just, I just didn't understand why they put that in there. It's like, now, because look, you already made it open world. You already are changing a lot by doing that. You're already adding all these non-linear mechanics. It's free flow combat. All the enemies are there. But now you're adding just it just sounds like you're just putting too much seasoning on the game with adding stealth mechanics to it, and like cracking people's heads and then necks, and then mowing down people with a gun turret. Like, I just didn't understand that. And then there's explosions like it's a Michael Bay film.
Yeah, and I think that's my big thing. It's like, it doesn't... I'm not sure they know what they want this game to be. I mean, obviously it's almost done. But I think they basically took so many different things from other games to put together to make this. Just the fact that the game itself wasn't the game it ended up being means that they still have some parts of that original, Final Fantasy Versus 13, whatever game in there, plus whatever else. Little sprinkling of Kingdom Hearts, some, very obviously some Metal Gear, and all this stuff, and what is left of its own identity. Because I have a very kind of personal attachment to Final Fantasy over the years. It was sort of like my childhood therapist. Helped me get
definitely
through a lot of bad times as a kid, because you just escape in these worlds, and you're gone. You don't have to worry about anything else. And that was amazing to me at that aspect. And I feel like for the longest time now, I haven't really had that connection to any of them. Sure, 10. 10 was the last one I really felt a connection to, and even then it was kind of... the gameplay of the game was good, but the surface level story never really touched me in a way that 6, 7, 8, 9... all of those kind of hit me at a certain point in my life where I could relate to what was happening. And now I have no idea what's going on in this game, and I really don't care to find out. And that's upsetting to me. I take that as kind of like a personal offense, because the series that I've had such an attachment to, like, has, like, abandoned me, kind of.
Yeah.
And I've said before that I think that they need to rebrand the Final Fantasy series. Like, let it continue on. Let Final Fantasy 15 be the, golden standard for the future of the series. Although I really feel like they need to change up anyway, because how many are they going to have? But, have another series. Like, World of Final Fantasy is a good example. They could keep that branding, but have, like World of Final Fantasy 2, World of Final Fantasy 3, that kind of thing. Or, do an entirely new series like Bravely Default tried to do, but I feel like didn't quite get what I wanted out of it. Something that's entirely new, but from the same creators, some, like, thematic elements that are shared, that kind of thing. So, like, it's a new series for people that want that classic gameplay style, the turn-based combat, all that stuff. And they can still have the main Final Fantasy series to experiment and do whatever they want with. But I want a series that, like, still catches that same nostalgia from the past. And maybe I'm just stuck. Like, everyone else is moving on, they want new things, and I just don't. But I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that way.
Well, I mean, here's a question. What is going on in Final Fantasy 15? What have they shown us in these trailers and stuff? They haven't really showed us any type of plot, or have they shown a villain in any of these trailers?
I'm sure they have, but, like, it hasn't been clear who the villain is.
Yeah, so
they've shown, like, a flash of someone who looks bad.
Yeah, and, if I'm having trouble remembering the villain, then that's bad. Yeah. That's just bad marketing. Maybe the game itself was just, the marketing strategy for it was just really bad, and that's why a lot of people aren't liking it, like me, or are skeptical of it. I mean, I don't know if I like it or don't like it, but what I see so far is just kind of putting a sour taste in my mouth. But, going back to the question, it's like, what makes Final Fantasy games so great? I mean, they were so easy for people to connect. Let's see. There's a main villain who you just already remember. The villains in Final Fantasy games are so memorable. The princess or the main character, the plot, it's like, let's go, we're just going to save the world. And that was it. That was mainly it. But, it's the journey that what made each Final Fantasy so great. And, I mean, holy shit, like, can you imagine what people... I mean, I didn't play Final Fantasy VII until, like, early 2000s for a while, until it was out. So I can only imagine how kids felt when they saw Sephiroth on commercials or something.
Sephiroth!
Yeah, exactly. Because he, doing that project video, I had a lot of different video sources, and I had some commercials for 7, and he was in it. It's like you already knew what you're yourself into. You're like, who the frick is this guy in this wall of fire, just with this huge, freaking sword or long shaft of a sword. I know, no pun.
Who is this man in his large shafts? I don't think you were watching a Final Fantasy VII video.
Damn it, I must have been drunk as a kid. But, it was so easy back in the day to connect to these games and be like, holy shit, this is what I'm getting myself into. And then 15 comes around, it's like, oh, man, my boy's in this car, we got these cool leather jackets, we all have issues, it just sounds like a bunch of, like, Anakin Skywalkers in one car, a bunch of angsty teenagers. And it's like, oh, look, there's a chocobo over there, man. And it's just like, all right, bye. Just keep driving. It's just like, everything is on flyby. It's like pretend it's like Jurassic Park, you're in this car and it's like you're on track. And then, like, oh no, a T-Rex just came out of nowhere. Look at that goat. Just ate it or dropped it on my car. Whatever. I'm just going to keep going. But in that movie, they couldn't keep going. But in this, it's like, it's too easy to avoid. The point is, it's too easy to avoid what was great in Final Fantasy. It's like there's not enough mandatory things to do in it. It's like a battle is so optional in 15. This side quest is very optional. It's like, oh, it's probably like 50 miles across the freaking land. It's like, God, do I really want to drive 50 miles? Nah, I'll just go, I don't know what I'm going to do. What is there to do at 15, Like, we haven't truly seen what you can do in the game, you know what I'm saying? It's like...
It's been distracting with how pretty it is.
Yeah, and it's like I said, they're driving in a car, you see the environment, and it's like, okay, they got out of the car. Okay, they're at a campfire. Okay, they're fighting this enemy. Oh, there's a damsel on... Probably not even in distress on the road. I don't know why there's a girl on the road, but, it's like stuff like that, like little things here and there. And that's like one of the challenges of doing open world games. It's like, how
do you really show off what you do when the world is literally your oyster? Yeah,
exactly. And like games like Witcher 3, which I love that game. That game was fantastic. You ride a horse around there, or you can walk. But there was just so many things in that game that required me to be off the horse or on the horse. Like there was, it's not my horse. I didn't have to clean my horse's hooves, like related to my car has a flat tire, like that stuff isn't like too necessary. That's just like too much.
When the first time you have control over your characters, the first action you have to do is push your car down the road. That's just not a good sign of how a game is going to play out.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't have more control over pushing your car than you do how you, battle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like, they could have done that, right? They could have done that still, that approach. But at the same time, they could have had... I don't know. It was a demo, so I don't know how the game starts. Maybe we'll...
No, that is literally how it starts. Like, you see a cool cinematic, and the first time you play is pushing the car. You push it down the road like a mile, and then, I think you see the garage or something, and it, cuts you over to the garage.
So, there's really no, prelude to the main story. There's no, precursor,
there's an opening cinematic, but I didn't watch it because I didn't want to have that spoiled in case I do play it. I just wanted to see, when you start playing, what you do.
Yeah, yeah. But, there was a lot of good introductions in Final Fantasy, in 6 was great because during these Magitech armors.
Oh, yeah, I love that scene.
And that was, you go and destroy things and, then you're over a cliffside and then the credits start rolling. Or, the title goes and it's like, holy shit, that was awesome. Mm-hmm. And you're Terra and the two guards are just, they're just regular guards.
They're Biggs and Wedge. They're not just regular guards.
Oh, Biggs and Webbs. That's fucking right. See, you told me to play it again, and I'm gonna play it and beat it for Rizzle this time. But a lot of the Final Fantasy games had really cool introductions like that. 7 was really cool because holy shit, you're Cloud, and you just jump off a train, and you got this cool sword on your back, and you blow up the Mako reactor, and then.
I love 9. The play 9, and everything.
Yeah, that was amazing. 9 was so great because I loved doing that in the beginning of 9. I must have played the beginning of 9 so many times because I've had friends wanting me to do it because I knew where all the items were and all that. And I mean, I fell in love with it because how cool to show your game of how vast it is. But you're on this big ass theater ship. You're Zidane. Fucking go in a dark room. You don't know who he is yet. It's kind of like a mystery straight from the beginning, which is so cool. And you light it up and you fight your boss who's wearing this fucking crazy mask. And you're like, what the fuck is going on right now? And then all of a sudden you go to the play. Shit goes bad. Bomb monster explodes your ship. And then you're in the evil forest or evil woods or whatever. And then you escape. And that's when the game truly starts. It's a really cool intro sequence to the game. It was just such a clever way of doing that, and
I'd argue the spectacle of that is way better than the actual spectacle they try to show in Final Fantasy 15, because you already care for the characters at that point. You've played their spectacle, with FMVs kind of cut in and stuff like that. But it's more narrative. It's not so just here's a cool cinematic, now push your car.
Yeah, and it takes its time, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you fight with in 9, you fight with these party members of your thief, your thief group, and they're not even in your party permanently. They're just there, which is cool. I mean, just like 6, Biggs and Webbs, it was like that, temporary, and then you're introduced to Vivi, who's he's going through his own perspective, and you kind of feel like who the hell is this character, and you kind of get an idea what he's about, and then you get to Steiner. You don't play Steiner yet until a bit later after the introduction part. You just think he's just some douche or some like I said before, stick up his ass, but he becomes your party member. Like, who would have thought, right? It was kind of like, maybe it was like, I don't remember if it was a surprise, but it's like, oh, okay, he's joining my group now. He's a part of this ensemble. And he was, they were all so different. Mm-hmm. Like, these games were so, these classic Final Fantasy games were just so good. Even 10 had really, different characters too. Now, was that a good thing in 10? I don't know. Waka I had to get used to a bit, and his Donkey Kong hair. but
John DiMaggio, you gotta love John DiMaggio.
Yeah, exactly. But in 15, it's just cinematic. This is the game. This is what's happening, right? It's just like, okay, here's the cinematic of showing what's going on in the game, and then okay, we're pushing a car. There's no like, I'm Noctis. I went to this town while all this shit in Kingsglaive was happening. Like what was happening in the movie. It's like, oh, maybe I met up with my friends there, or I just became friends with. There's like no introduction to them. It's like what classified, like he's funny guy. He's the smart ass. Here's the serious guy, and here's this female. Here's this girl, and who's also usually Final Fantasy girl characters are badasses anyway, which is great.
And I'm
we
sure
don't
this
get
is all an
any of that.
oversimplification. Like, supposedly this story, like how it starts and why they're trying to get the car back working and stuff, because they're trying to get Noctis to his wedding. Like, he's supposed to be marrying the queen or whatever and become the new king of like the region, all that stuff. And so like the story is kind of playing out because like he's forced into this arrangement, but he has to do it because of his dad, and like so there's all the the family drama and like the political turmoil that's kind of built up in it, which is why they're marrying him off to kind of like have a peace treaty between the nations. Like, I don't care about that crap. Like, that's not something that speaks to me, because it's like it's not really about the characters, it's about like the motivations. The characters themselves don't seem that interesting.
Yeah, and that's Halo 5 suffered from that, because for the longest time you made it feel like 343, the company, they made it seem like Master Chief was on the run. He was being hunted this whole time. And then when you play the game, have you played it at all?
No, I don't have an Xbox One.
Okay. If you ever do, when you play the game, it's going to be exactly like Final Fantasy 15. Like it starts off the same way. Master Chief just has his old squad mates with him, and they're just there. So it's just like, wait, what about this whole like build up? Like, how I thought he was on the run and he was by himself, like he was framed. Basically, all those advertisements leading up to Halo 5 was just bullshit. They basically, 343 literally lied to us.
Yeah, I heard
no
about
joke.
that.
It pissed off a lot of people about the story because then it was just like, who the fuck are these squad mates of his? Like, okay, they're old squad mates, but like, what happened to the part that he was getting hunted? It's like, how is this? How did we get from there to here? And the game doesn't even talk about that. It's just like, hey, we're here. We're all Spartans here. And, one of the big gripes about that game is that the characters were nothing was relatable about them. You didn't learn anything about them, really. And that's because there was no lead up to it, how it was supposed to. Like, they could have done like a really cool, like, oh, Master Chief's on his own for a bit, and then it leads up to his squad mates. They could have done that with 15. He starts off on his own. It's like, you could see Noctis going to this town for whatever reason, him doing his thing, and then bam, step by step, you meet up with his friends, and then like, oh shit, we're getting married, arranged marriage, let's fix this land. My dad, it's whatever, going through this. But we don't get that. We don't get that slow paced build up to have an actual relationship with these characters, because you just don't put that many main characters from the get go together and expect people to be like, whoa, it's like you can't. It's kind of hard to connect to a group of people that you can't really have the time to connect with them.
Yeah. Do you? Random little side note. I feel like we're probably ending, trying to tie it up here. But do you watch Arrow?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, I'll make my point anyway.
Sure.
Basically, like the first few seasons of that, they kind of built up, him needing a team because, like, on your own, it's kind of hard to do anything successfully. So, like, he brought in, like, his sister to help him out, and, like, a few other kind of people joined his cause over time, as I saw, like, someone is, fighting the good fight, and, like, I want to do that too, so he goes seek him out and stuff like that. And all of them have kind of come and gone, like, either died or, like, went off to do their own thing, or they just probably couldn't afford the actors anymore, so they had to write them out. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this season, they kind of did, like, a soft reboot of it with, like, tying up a lot of the storylines that weren't working in the past and just kind of setting up a new thing with a new team. But instead of kind of introducing things over time like they used to, they literally just like made the entire plot of the series, like the season, about getting a team together. So like episode 1, like he's found these people who were out like kind of doing their own crime fighting, and he like brings them in and trains them. One of them had been on the show before. One was like actually a cast member the last season, but like not in this capacity. You kind of knew about them a little bit, but it was like 2 were entirely new, like just brought in new characters, and the team itself was all kind of like newly formed. So where in the past you had like seasons to care about these people, now it's just like suddenly has this team of people who he's like digging into, and like you gotta fight the fight, like whatever, in his stupid modulated Arrow voice. And like you don't care about any of them. Like they get into trouble and stuff, and it's like they haven't established you as characters. They've just established you as a team. So you could die, and I would not feel bad. I would just assume he'd replace you with someone else I don't care about. And like it's just kind of a story oversight, really. Like if you can't build up consideration for your characters, then the story itself is going to mean nothing.
And that's what they do with like the Marvel movies. They all had their original movies of just them, and then it's like, okay, we're all on a team together. We're the Avengers. Same thing with the Justice League.
Well, they kind of did that in reverse, but
yeah. It's oh, that could be another topic. But yeah, there was like nothing to where in 15 it like prepares you for these group of people at all. It's just like you can say that the beginning of Final Fantasy 15 is like, this is season 4 of Final Fantasy 15. Okay, we're all together now. We got all of our buddies, so they better do a good job kind of connecting you to those characters. They better do some really cool things they talk about in the past, like how they met, like what guys talk about, like, remember that one time we did this at this party, or remember when you shat your pants at this time.
That's still all telling and not showing.
And that's so they might have to pull some like J.J. Abrams Lost shit and have just all these flashbacks, which I hated Lost for that. So it's kind of like,
but if you can play the flashbacks, that's one thing. It helps a little bit at least, because then you're kind of getting the slow burn throughout the game instead of at the beginning, and I'll forgive that. But
and
if they crap, go on. I forgot what I was going to say. I'll get back to it.
And Metal Gear Solid 5 was the story was very scattered in that game. Like, I loved the gameplay in 5, and it was pretty nice playing it at 60 frames per second on consoles because it's open world, and you don't see that still in console games these days, which is really, really sad. And a lot of the story was scattered through these like cassette tapes and just dialogue and stuff, and it wasn't like... Because we know Metal Gear Solid, it's usually all about cutscenes and explains. It's like you're playing a movie. You're not even playing, you're just watching a movie. Like 4 was ridiculous with cutscenes. Like, holy crap. But then 5, like, the beginning scene of 5 was really cool. You're like you're like, body's all fucked up, laying on your back, and it's like you're trying to escape this hospital and stuff, and and you get an idea how you got there from Ground Zeroes, which was cool because it's like a precursor. So it's like, why couldn't they do that for 15? They could have had a prequel to 15, like a little, like, type Ground Zeroes, like a short game, to where it gets you prepped up, because Kingsglaive was a good way to connect us to the king and what's going on in the city. But it doesn't even show Noctis or his friends until the very end of the movie. After the credits, by the way, they pulled a Marvel stunt.
Oh. So that's what I was going to say, actually. I never bodes well for something when they feel the need, like, midway through development, to release not just a prequel movie, but that anime series about the characters, which I assume is also a prequel, just to, like, help explain the world. Like, if your game doesn't do that on its own, and they have to put out this supplementary material before the game comes out, just, if you care about them. But then other people that play the game that didn't care about that stuff and don't get that information don't get the same connection. And it's like, your game should be self-sufficient. Sure, put other things around it, like what Final Fantasy VII did, although not very successfully. But, they did it. Yeah. Do that, but after you've already, like, created a solid, like, standalone product.
Yeah, exactly. Because 7 was just its standalone game, and then it had Crisis Core, then Dirge of Cerberus, and then the movie. But that was all an afterthought. Or maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe they thought of it at that time. But, a lot of money went into Final Fantasy VII, no doubt. So I'm sure they were mainly focused on that game. And even though Crisis Core was pretty decent, I never played Dirge of Cerberus, but I liked Advent Children. Yeah, that's what I gathered.
I played way more of it than I should have.
Yeah, they decided to give Dirge of Cerberus the main character is Vincent, who already is not even a... It's like, I think he looks cool, but he had one of the worst storylines in 7. Because it's just...
He's my favorite to play as, but yeah, you had no reason to connect to him as a character.
Yeah, but they did it, though. They did it the right way. Like, standalone game, then they have all these surrounding things, It's like Star Wars. You have the 3 movies, and then, here comes the books, here comes the comic books, here comes the video game, the merchandising. Mm-hmm. That's you do the standalone thing first. You get out your game, even though Final Fantasy has been around for a long time. But here's the thing. You shoot yourself in the foot when you make each game its own game, basically its own standalone thing. So, but with 15, this is like the first Final Fantasy game to where they released a movie before the game. They released an animated series, and who knows what else they invented for it. But
mobile game, a few other things.
Mobile game.
I don't remember all of it, honestly. But that's marketing 101. Not really, but for the sake of this, marketing 101. You don't expand the universe of something that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have something before you branch it out.
Yeah, it's basically you're double dipping. And what was it? It's like Halo 5 was like that. Had all this expanded universe stuff. I mean, Halo obviously was already, they were all connected to one another, but they marketed Halo 5 like crazy. And like, everything that led up to Halo 5 was nothing even a part of the main story. There was nothing in the main story of Halo 5 that reflected off of the stuff that led up to it. From like the podcast, this podcast series they did, these animated movies, and merchandising.
What about the web series with Luke Cage?
Oh, Nightfall. There you go, Nightfall. None of that was even mentioned in Halo 5 story. So 15, it better not be like that. Like, there better be stuff from the mobile game, the movie, the animated series. That stuff better be in there, because you are already giving us Final Fantasy 15 before it's even the fucking product, before we're even playing it, because this is a video game first. The video game should come first. and then the movie, and then this and that. You know, you just don't do that at all. So I'm hoping they do a good job with that, because that's a really hard thing to connect gamers with, because if you have something to where they're going to play the game and they have no connection to what happened before from, you know, all the marketing and stuff, then people aren't going to know. They're not going to care, right? If it's executed so poorly, then they're not going to care. But if you have it in 15 to where they say something that happened in those previous things, then it's like, shit, I should watch these things. You know, I'll buy the Blu-ray. I'll buy the mobile game. I'll watch the animated series. You know, like, there's a motivation there to expand your knowledge on the game, which is kind of what I'm hoping they do. And Kingdom Hearts 0. They had a bunch of in-between filler games. Like, holy shit, Kingdom Hearts 2 to 3 had the most filler games I've ever seen, ever, on a handheld. But, I'm trying to remember. Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, you know, they had the filler games in between that.
Chain of Memories, that's the only one.
Chain of Memories, and then they did a good job talking about what happened in those games in their future installment, you know, in Kingdom Hearts 2 with like Roxas and Axel and what happened before that. They did a good job, because then it's just like, okay, and I want to play those games. Like, I want to know what happened. I want to, you know, instead of reading off the internet, which you can just do and save money, but it's not as fun, obviously. And then they're like, okay, well, let's just release Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5 and have all these games in there and prep for Kingdom Hearts 3. Like, how fucking smart is that, right? What a great way to promote your upcoming Kingdom Hearts 3 game. And then there's 2.8
Which is also pretty impressive
out.
when you think about the fact that most of these games are on different consoles across different companies. Like, sure, Square owns them all, but, like, you know, there's a Game Boy Advance game in there. There's a DS game. Well, Recoded, I think, was just the... Like, Recoded and 358 divided by 2. The Days one were just the cutscenes, but there's a 3DS game in there. There's a PSP game. There's, like, you know, all these different systems. They just brought them together and threw them on one console, and it's like, thank you. But also, like, that's smart, you know, and instead of just basically finding a way to fund their project that is way too overstuffed on the budget, like 15, they've actually done fan service for people that care about what's already out there. Like, I don't feel like enough people could care about 15 to want the supplementary stuff before the thing's even out. But with Kingdom Hearts, they, like you said, they did the opposite, where, like, Kingdom Hearts 1 was kind of a fluke that just, like, it did really well, and they're like, well, crap, we need to make more of these. So that's when they started branching out, because, like, they couldn't make them fast enough. And people ate it up, you know, all this different stuff. They just ate it all up. And now I feel like we can't get enough Kingdom Hearts stuff.
Yeah, it's like, here, shove it in your mouth and just eat it. You know,
but if you shoot yourself in the foot before you've even released your product, you're doomed to not get anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, and, like, you said it, like, maybe they shot themselves in the foot by releasing World of Final Fantasy too close to Final Fantasy 15, you know, because I'm sure a ton of people bought World of Final Fantasy just because it's got, you know, I mean, the cutesy look, it really gets people, you know.
Sora's going to be in it, so there's that.
Sora, and then it's it's turn-based, and it's got Pokemon-esque stuff in it, you know, and it's like, you know, it's a pretty unique game. Like, it's a cool concept. But then it's just like, oh, 15's coming out. I forgot. Because remember they delayed it about 2 months just for polishing shit. Because, you know, let's delay a game that's been in you know.
You mean they've delayed it like 5 times?
5 times. Yeah.
That's why I feel like at this point nobody cares. So putting out all this other stuff is just like, please give us money to pay for the game that we keep delaying, but they're spending more money on this stuff when we don't even have the product that we actually care about yet. So it's just, it's a whole mess.
And I'm hoping it's not like Destiny, where that had a ton of money go into it, and it was a subpar game. It's like, it just like No Man's Sky, exactly the same thing. So much hype and so much money went into it, and I'm hoping Final Fantasy 15 doesn't. I hope that doesn't happen with it, because I don't want Final Fantasy 15. I don't want my love for Final Fantasy to be so shattered. Like fuck. I mean, this Final Fantasy 7 remake coming out, like I think that's gonna be pretty cool. And I'm like, okay, that's.
I'm skeptical.
It
looks like it's that same engine again.
Yeah. So exactly like the Kingdom Hearts 3 engine. Yeah. And people have been wanting Final Fantasy 7 remake since PS3 tech demo of Final Fantasy 7. Like that would have been fucking amazing if it came out at that time. Like that's when I feel like they should have done it at that time. Because shit, how long has it been since 7's been out? So now they're just doing a remake, It's going to be...
Because they're desperate.
Yeah, it's going to be like 20 years since it's come out. Holy crap. And I remember them saying that the only way they'll do a remake for 7, because they said it takes a lot of work, which, I understand, is if Final Fantasy 14 makes more...
well, they just said if another Final Fantasy game makes as much money as 7 did.
Yeah,
and none of them
something
have.
Like that.
It's like, well, crap. I guess we'll make 7. Hopefully it'll make some money.
Yeah. But Kingdom Hearts 3, I feel like that those sales for that game is going to be way higher than 15. Because, like you said, what relatable characters are in 15? Oh, what relatable characters are in Kingdom Hearts? Oh, well, Sora for one. Oh, Goofy and Donald. Okay, I love Disney. Oh, what's this? Hercules, Lion King, and here's Sephiroth, here's Cloud, and
they're putting in a Big Hero 6 world. I'm sold.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get to be in the world of Tangled, and I don't know about Frozen, but I do like Ice World, so it'd probably be really good.
It'll probably be a Frozen world. They just can't let that go.
Yeah. I see what you did there. Wow, what a good conclusional statement. So, yeah, in conclusion, so the world knows how we feel about Final Fantasy 15 to the core.
Not much else on Final Fantasy, but they are solid on 15.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about Final Fantasy is that it was one of those games that were just so unique back in the day, and it's still a unique game. It's still it's still interesting. People are still paying attention to the franchise. But we all grew up with it. We all had our first experience of taking ourselves out of reality and putting ourselves into these great worlds. And we all have our favorite Final Fantasy. Like it's so great that we have one. Like mine's 9, yours is 6, right?
9's a close second.
And, yeah, and it's so great. And I really hope that what we fell in love with in old Final Fantasy games, we're able to do that again with 15. So I'm hoping that, I'm just hoping that there's a lot of brain power went into this, a lot of careful strategizing. So we'll see.
I'm just glad that if it doesn't meet expectation, I've still got World of Final Fantasy.
Yeah, and I don't, because I don't have a PS4, but at least Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out on Xbox and PS4. Whoa!
Consolation prize match.
Yeah, and I feel like if Final Fantasy 15 and Kingdom Hearts 3 was on one console, it would be 60 frames, because 15 is 30 frames, which is disappointing, But I don't know. If you have the PS4 Pro, it might be at 60.
Probably.
But anyway, so guys, that has been the longest podcast I've ever done with an awesome person named Zero Score. Aww. And it's been an honor, sir, to have you on the most underrated podcast on YouTube or on the planet. But like I said, I thank you for being on here, and I hope we see more of. Yes, thank you, sir. And I hope we see more of you in the future. Preferably, I'll invent a teleportation device and teleport you here, and we'll do face-to-face, literally FaceTime in the flesh.
I'll probably teleport you here. Your roommate's a nightmare to work with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that hovering noise that you've been hearing, that's me getting closer. The teleportation device is being invented.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, guys, leave your thoughts below if you're alive throughout this whole thing. I appreciate your guys' comments, likes, comments, subscribes, whatever. So everyone have a good night and pray to Square Enix lords that they don't destroy Final Fantasy with 15.
Let's hope.
All right. Bye.